Welcome, Bronco Nation, to another exciting video. This one is super special because not only is this a massive matchup, Boise State versus UNLV, a huge game for both teams. This is going to be the biggest game probably of the Mountain West Conference season for any in-conference game, because these are two teams that you're looking at both setting themselves for contention for the Mountain West title. Could be a game you see repeated at the end of the year. But not only is it a big game in that sense, but you're also looking at the two teams that are going to come out of this conference realignment situation as the likely heads of the next two conferences that are emerging from this, with the new built Pac-12 and the new Mountain West. And so while this has been just a very new early stage rivalry, you can expect that this is going to continue, even if they're not playing each other in conference play, to continue to be a comparison type rivalry off the field scenario pushing through into future seasons. Maybe there'll be some non-conference matchups in the future, who knows? But either way, this is the last guaranteed time that Boise State will be playing UNLV. And to commemorate that, I've made sure to bring on the best UNLV YouTuber, podcaster, media, anything out there in Jason Kelly from the Let's Run podcast. Not only that, he is a fantastic show host for any group of five conversations as well. He has a legal degree. He passed his bar exam. So he is somebody that has a great wealth of knowledge on how all of the legalities are working for conference realignment. He does a great show. So I want to encourage everybody to, when this wraps up, if you're watching on replay, to go over, find his show, Let's Run Podcast. Make sure you subscribe today. You can also find him on Twitter as well, Jason Kelly. Make sure you subscribe. Outstanding content. Of course, as always, welcome into the Horseshoe Spirit Studios. Make sure that you grab yourself a bottle of Horseshoe Spirits liqueurs at any liquor store in the southwest of Idaho. So any UNLV fans coming up for a game, make sure that you don't return to Vegas empty-handed. Make sure you grab yourself a bottle, multiples different to choose from. If the store doesn't have it, if you're a Boise native and they don't have it, make sure you ask for it by name and they will get it in for you. Must be 21 or older to consume. All right, this is going to be a fantastic preview. I'm really excited. I do apologize to anyone who's noticing my audio is a little bit off. My microphone was not working, so we're going to just work with it how it is. Fortunately, Jason has fantastic audio, so hopefully I'll just let him talk more than me, and that will just kind of cover it all up. But we're going to get through in this preview. We're going to look at Boise State versus UNLV, the 4-2 Broncos facing off against the 6-0 UNLV Rebels. Saturday, 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time on FS1, so a primetime slot. Everyone recognizing how important this game is. Boise State favored by 10.5 points, or they were last night when I put my notes together. I didn't actually check the line ahead of this. They may have shifted a little bit. I know the open is like 11 points. It's been kind of decreasing. But 10.5 points and then a 71.1% chance of winning per ESPN. And of course, like I said, Jason's on with me. We're going to go through the series history between both of these teams. We'll look at the key players for both Boise State and UNLV. We're going to look at the keys of the game, again, for both Boise State and UNLV. And then we'll both give our score prediction, which brings me to my favorite part of every single one of my videos, which is the score prediction challenge. Please, in the comments, let me know your thoughts on this game. Give me your score predictions right now as well. But also for the actual challenge itself, when this video is over, or if you're watching it on replay, make sure you actually go into the actual comment section of the video itself after the video is done showing and put your comments in there. Because otherwise, the comments just disappear and I won't be able to see them after the live goes away. So once it's all done, make sure you go back in and put your comments. Of course, you are competing to win this Ashton Jeanty jersey. The winner will be put into a pot at the end of the season, and we'll draw one and see who wins. Closest score prediction wins it. If there's multiple people get it right, multiple people win. And then just one more cleanup item from last week. I forgot to announce the winner of the score prediction challenge. I greatly apologize for that. So the winner of last week's score prediction challenge was Alex Campbell with a prediction of 41-24. So only 1 point out. Fantastic job. Put your score predictions in below. Make sure you watch all the way through. Give us your comments live. We'll bring up comments as we go. It's a long intro, but I'm excited to start talking about it. Thanks, Jason, for coming on. It's an awesome to have you on.
Yeah, man. We became friends last year, basically, and really, it's been a fun interaction. I'm glad that UNLV. I mean, we haven't won a game, in this pseudo rivalry, growing rivalry, I guess you could call it. But I've really enjoyed the fact that we've played games that mattered. Like every game that we've played has mattered in the last few years, and that's how you know that something's really fun. That a relationship between two programs is fun if the games matter. And so I can't wait for this one because it matters a ton. This one matters just as much as any of them outside of maybe the championship games.
Yeah, these huge non-conference, or it's currently conference game matchups, are exactly what makes the Mountain West fun to watch, because you always have two teams or three or four teams are right there at the top. And then also you have anybody that can beat anyone as well. And Mountain, when you're looking at a UNLV team, it's really an enigma right now, because UNLV is 6-0 coming up against a 4-2 Boise State team, and who is also an enigma. How good are either of these two programs? It is really hard to tell. A 4-2 Boise State team, who both of their losses are to top 25 programs, versus a 6-0 UNLV team who truly really hasn't been tested. That UCLA win is looking better as the season goes on, but also at the time, I mean, they fired their head coach, so it's not exactly what you would say is a quality top program either. So how good, before we even get into looking at any of this, how good do you think UNLV actually is?
So I've said this to you several times. Preseason, I was very consistent. This is an 8-4 team. And I actually think we're still an 8-4 team. We're playing like an 8-4 team, that's for sure. This team is solid. It's a good group of 5 team. It's a team that could compete for the Mountain West Championship this season, but is fatally flawed in a lot of different ways. And we have a gamer as a quarterback in Anthony Calandria. And him and a few other, really nice performances in certain weeks have bailed us out of really tough games. I think that Miami of Ohio win actually is going to turn out to be a decent win, because they usually do pretty well in the MAC as well. But we've kind of escaped some games that we really should have lost. And I think that this team is a really solid. They're probably a 9-3 type of team now that they've kind of proven me wrong a little bit. But I kind of stick by my idea that this team is not elite. And obviously Vegas knows that we're not elite. And the entire world is going to pick this game, outside of a couple, maybe Rebel Girl might pick the Rebels in this one, but I don't think, we're solid. You can't be a bad team at 6-0, but we're not a great team. And that's okay. We're a lot of fun. It's you think about, we lost everything when Barry Odom left to Purdue, everything. Only brought 2 returning starters back, one on each side of the ball. And so, I think that there's a lot of, there's a lot of really legitimate questions. And I actually am probably one of the more pessimistic Rebel fans about just how good this team really is.
Yeah, I wanted to call out this comment, actually was made before the video even went live, so getting in early, because this is actually not the truth. Like we talked about preseason, I was a little higher on this Rebel team than maybe even you were. If anybody watched my preview, I was actually calling for a 9-3 UNLV team. And at this point, I thought that they would have at least one loss, because I thought that UCLA game was going to be a loss. So I think that I agree as well that I was calling for 9-3, not because UNLV was going to be elite. They bring in a lot of transfers, but what we've seen in the world of transfers is that if you bring in a couple of transfers, they can augment a roster if you have a solid base. But if you build a team out of transfers, it's not going to be a successful season year one, like we saw Colorado under Sanders, right? Like, it's going to take a little while to kind of see those sparks start flying. And for UNLV, this is a team that is almost entirely made up of transfers, at least at most of the starting positions. You have a couple of guys, we'll talk about them, I'm sure we get a preview for the game, but mostly it's those top transfers. So how good really is this team? I will say 6-0 means something, right? Finding a way to win, even if that means that you go down to the wire versus Miami, Ohio. If it means that you barely win versus an Air Force program that misses a short field goal. Even if those are ways that you win games, 6-0 still means something. It means that the team has a culture that is finding ways to rally through adversity, a lot of defensive adversity for UNLV, and find ways to bring out and pull out a win. So when you're looking at this Boise State team, this is going to be a program that hasn't necessarily found that way to win. Now, they've played tougher teams, but they have a program that has struggled in a lot of ways. Maybe some weaknesses that UNLV will be able to exploit. I mean, they have been incredibly undisciplined. We'll talk about it here, but the penalties have been a major issue for this team. Just little errors that you don't see from Boise State teams of the past, dropped passes. Last week, an incredible job making a touchdown out of a muffed point after attempt. But even that was a muffed hold that ended up becoming a touchdown. And those are the kind of little mistakes that you don't usually see out of a Boise State team. And so I think that it's going to be a great bar to find out where both of these programs at. UNLV, like you said, really hasn't played anybody so far. And if you look at their season the rest of the way out, they really don't play anybody the rest of the way out. I mean, I believe I'm not wrong in this, that they missed Fresno State. They don't have to play them. I believe I got to schedule it right here. They don't have to play Fresno State, and they don't have to play San Diego State. They got New Mexico, Colorado State, Utah State, Hawaii, and Nevada the rest of the way out, and that's it. And so this is really going to kind of be that one benchmark. And if UNLV wants a chance of doing anything postseason, say they're able to run the table the rest of the way, this is that one game that, just like Boise State going up against Oregon last year, right? This could be that one game that validates the rest of the schedule. On Boise State's side of things, we don't know where this team is at either, because they lost to Notre Dame, but that's also, Notre Dame's a really good program. USF's a really good program, and then they've played well against terrible teams like App State and Air Force. So we don't have a good actual measuring marker. Yeah, Boise State's not a top group of 5 team this year. They're not like a Power 4 type level program, but they could still be a competitive group of 5 program. And I think that is what we're going to find out. So when you look at the series history in Boise State and UNLV, 11-3, Boise State leading the series. 11 wins. UNLV getting all of their wins early on in this rivalry when Boise State was in the FCS era. So UNLV getting both their wins in 73 and 74. And then another win for UNLV in 76. But then after that, Boise State has won every other game in the series, including all of their FBS matchups, including last year when UNLV and Boise State for the first time ever met twice in one season, 29-24. In the opening when they were playing in the regular season versus at the Rebels, and then 21-7 in the Mountain West title. So when you look at this series history, obviously for Boise State UNLV last year, what did you see out of this program? Some really close matchups. Do you think, and we'll look at the score predictions at the end, but you think that we're looking at maybe another dogfight like we did last season?
I think that last year game that we had at Allegiant Stadium was really our chance to beat Boise. We had a chance. I mean, we played that game. I think we played Ashton Genty in that game specifically as well as anybody did all year. He was still awesome, of course. But that game at Allegiant really was kind of our chance. And Hodge threw a pick in the end zone at the end of the first half. And Boise State and Maddox Madsen specifically. I mean, I see people talking about Maddox Madsen, and it's like I've only ever seen this dude just play great against UNLV. So I get that he's not perfect, but I've seen him play really well against the Rebels. And so, when I think about the last couple of years, we've been close, but it takes a long, you have to understand with the depths of despair that this program was coming from. It takes a long time to build a program up. You don't do it from one year to the next. And because of Barry Odom and a weak schedule in year one, and then a very good team in the year 2, it kind of seemed like we were a bit further along in that building process, maybe than we actually were or are. But actually, I really do think we're a respectable college football program now. And when you survive a coach leaving and still are a respectable team and a respectable program, you show that you're more than one person. And I think UNLV showing we still have a little bit more to prove that we are more than one, in Barry Odom, one person. But we could totally see a dogfight this year. But when I think about last year's teams, that was a great Boise team. That was a really, really, really good UNLV team. They were great matchups, and it sucks that we lost that game in Vegas because I don't think we really had much of a prayer at that game in Boise last December. But I mean, I look back at it really fondly, and I'm glad that we get one more opportunity. Thank goodness the conference had us scheduled for at least one more game this year, because this game could be a dogfight.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that this is a series between Boise State and UNLV that is only heated up, and it is a little bit of a shame that it's ending the way that it is, and Boise State moving on to the Pac-12 and UNLV deciding to stay back. Because I really think that you are seeing, just as UNLV starts to hit their stride as a program, I think that they are starting to get there. We'll see how long Dan Mullins is around with the coaching carousel that we're seeing open up. But regardless, UNLV has now been able to survive, like you said, to a coaching change and continue to succeed at a high level. And so UNLV is starting to reach some of that potential that people have seen out of them for a while when they talk about UNLV as a potential expansion team. Now, we're not going to go into Power 4 and that kind of thing, because I think
thank goodness I don't want to talk about that.
We've had plenty of videos, and we've actually talked about it on your channel. So again, people go out, Boise State fans or Rebel fans, make sure you go check out Jason's channel and like and subscribe. But in this matchup, I think that this is going to be actually two very competitive teams at a very similar level. I think it's different areas right now. A UNLV team that's full of transfers that are still potentially untested right now with the schedule that they had, and still trying to build up their program. But they are starting to gel as a team. And then for Boise State, we didn't bring in a ton of transfers, but it's also a team that is going through a rebuild, not just because of Ashton Genty, but also because of what Andy Avalos did this program for so long. And we just didn't see the effects of it because Ashton Genty was so good to kind of cover all of that up. But for a Boise State team, we're not, like you said, we're not elite like we were last year. And so this is the team that's still trying to develop and build itself up as well, and try to find, okay, how do we function as a program without Ashton Genty to rely on? And those players are starting to step up. And so while they're coming from different places, transfer portal overload versus losing your star player and trying to rebuild, they are both in a very similar place where they're just starting to kind of gel as programs. And again, that is why this is such a key proving point. And it's going to come down to those key players. So we're going to get into that part. So as fans watching, please make sure you put in the comments. I'll throw those up for any key players you think are going to be major difference makers for either Boise State or for UNLV in this matchup. And then we're going to break down our key players for Boise State and UNLV. We'll start off Boise State. My number one key player for this game, and you saw his photo on the thumbnail, is going to be Ty Benefield. UNLV, their defense is suspect, but their offense is very, very scary. And it mostly comes down to elite quarterback play that they've been seeing on their end of the field. And so for Boise State, a secondary that has been much maligned, the last 3 games have actually been an incredible step up in performance. Boise State fans maybe are not noticing because there's so much negativity swirling around the quarterback position. That's hogging the media spotlight right now. But Boise State secondary has actually put up 3 of maybe the best back-to-back-to-back games that we've seen out of Boise State secondary in the last 5 or 6 years. They've held 3 quarterbacks to career lows in passing, and it all starts with Ty Benefield, the field general back there at the safety position. 42 tackles, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. He is going to be a massive key in stopping this UNLV passing attack, which is very, very potent. On the other end, for Boise State offensively, it's going to come down to our own passing attack being able to step up. Maddox Matz, I'm going to go too in depth here because I'm going to talk about him a little bit more when we get to the keys to the game. There's a little bit sneak peek there. But Boise State for the quarterback position, there's been major struggles there. And he's thrown for over 1,500 yards, 61% completion. But he's also had 10 sacks and 5 interceptions. So 11 touchdowns, but 5 interceptions and 10 sacks. And fans are starting to really question if not just is he the quarterback for this season, because I think we all recognize that there's not a quarterback who is able to step into his shoes this year. But he still has at least another season for Boise State into next year. And he has a lot to prove if he wants to rally back the fan base and show that Boise State has a chance of doing anything next season, because I think a lot of fans are questioning whether or not he can. So this is a big game for him. And obviously, when you don't have Ashton Jeanty, when you have an offensive line that struggled as much as it has the last few games, you need Max Madsen to step up and play at the top of the spotlight if Boise State wants a chance of winning this. And then thirdly, it's going to be the edge, JVM, Jaden Vernon Morgan. 27 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. Not the monster season that we expected to see out of JVM so far. Boise State's really struggled in the absence of Ahmad Hassanin. We were hoping that JVM was going to step up into that spotlight, and he's had some good moments, but he hasn't played consistently as far as bringing that pressure from the edge position. And again, when you're talking about a quarterback who can pass and run, Boise State needs to be able to stop that in both the over-the-top passing, but also being able to apply that pressure or be able to keep that contained. That all comes down to JVM. So those are my Boise State players. You can throw out your thoughts, and then we can move on to UNLV.
Sure, yeah. I really like a lot of players on the defensive line for Boise, especially JVM, I guess I'll call him. So I don't have to say the full name. But that's kind of been the biggest area that's impressed me from Boise. And it's not that they're always consistent, like across the entire line, but there are some individual players that really are, and he's probably one of the best examples of it, that are really good at breaking through and getting penetration through the opposing team's offensive line. So he's a guy that I really like. And then again, I just want to reiterate that Maddox Madsen's played really well against UNLV. Basically every time they've ever played, he's played awesome. And with this secondary, now UNLV's secondary actually isn't as much of an issue. I mean, look, like there's still some holes, don't get me wrong, but they're ball hawks. I mean, they force turnovers a lot. That's the only way we've been winning several of these games. A lot of times the problem with UNLV's defense is actually you'll see the defensive line and the run game. I mean, you could sneeze and run 10 yards on this UNLV defense. And so, I really respect Maddox, and I think I think this Boise team is flawed. But flawed in a sense that a really good team is flawed. It's like the Lakers are flawed when they, in 2023, when they had Anthony Davis and LeBron James, they didn't have any wing players. It's like, they're still a really good team. Doesn't mean they're not good. But there are some flaws and there are some holes. And I think that Boise State's got the players to get this one done. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I really respect that. We can jump into UNLV, guys, if that's cool with you. Yeah. So key number 1 for this game is Anthony Calandria. I don't know if you would agree with this, but I think, and I feel like people have generally come to this conclusion. I think Bryson Barnes was kind of showing a little bit at Utah State, but I think Anthony Calandria probably has the most impressive list of performances in this calendar year so far for a Mountain West quarterback. Especially that Air Force game. I mean, he was unbelievable, and you saw that run that he had to basically, win the game. We gave Air Force way too much time. They had 30 seconds left, and that was way too much time for them to score. So, and we ended up almost losing the game again and going to overtime. But I think Anthony Calandria is an absolutely fantastic player. He's a baller, man. And you saw that when he was at Virginia for 2 years, throwing a ton of touchdowns, threw a lot of picks too. But he and Mullen have been a very good combination. You've seen this UNLV offense be really explosive, and it all comes down to him. And it's not just through throwing the ball. He's got some good targets in Jaden Bradley and others, but he can also run the ball. He's a very quick and very decisive runner, and the designed run plays that we call for him. And Boise State has shown a vulnerability against running quarterbacks this season. And so I think that Anthony Calandria is absolutely a key to this game. And he could, if the Rebels win, it's going to be because Anthony Calandria is the best player on the field. If the Rebels win, that's the only way they're going to do it. It's going to be because he throws for 300 yards and doesn't make a ton of mistakes and runs for 100 yards. I mean, that's how it's going to happen. Player number 2 is on the defensive side of the ball. It's Makr McDuffie. He is UNLV's leader on the defense. Kind of, not as much of a power linebacker as much as kind of he kind of drops back a lot, which is part of the problem with the line. And Paul Gunther, in that he's been fired by half the NFL teams. He's our defensive coordinator, who is like an interim defensive coordinator. But McDuffie is kind of the glue. I mean, if he is Captain Smith, in the box of the Titanic. As the Titanic's going down, McDuffie is the only guy trying to keep order as the ship sinks. He's an outstanding player, physical. Started for us last season alongside Jackson Woodard, Stonewall Jackson. We miss him. I don't know if he likes that nickname, but but it's a good one. And so he's kind of my key player for the defense. I'd love to see him just kind of, if he can just help our linebackers play better run defense, it would just, because it is so frustrating to watch these guys try and play. And you can see his frustration level kind of as the captain of the defense, trying to tell guys, get out, contain, be decisive. Don't run into gaps too early. Don't get mucked up on the offensive line. And then the last key is Jet Thomas, who I think, for my money, I like him as he's my favorite running back, obviously, as a UNLV fan in the Mountain West. He's been outstanding. The only issue is he doesn't get enough carries, 11 or 12 carries a game, for a guy that's averaging like 5 yards after, he really, Jet Thomas really admired Ashton Jeanty and really looked up to him. And you can see him trying to emulate Ashton Jeanty in a lot of ways, and in a respectful manner. He wants to be like Ashton Jeanty. And in some plays, you see he plays like Ashton Jeanty occasionally. He's able to leave his body and transform into an incredible player occasionally, if the staff will let him. He's an outstanding running back. Please, for the love of all that is good, give him 15, 16, 17, 18, 20 carries, because I'm so tired of watching Jaden Glover and Kevon Lee get carries in this offense. Jet Thomas is incredible. So those are my 3 players, Anthony Calandria, Jet Thomas, Makr McDuffie.
Yeah, I remember watching your review of the first UNLV game, and kind of your comments were that you just don't feel like the staff knows how to utilize these players, basically, to kind of summarize that. They're playing too many. They have almost too many weapons, and they're not letting the weapons that are actually building that momentum to have a chance to do that. And they just keep subbing people in and out. And yeah, when you talk about Thomas, it's actually averaging 8 yards a carry. So that is absolutely insane. That's Ashton Jeanty-esque type average yardage there. But I think he only has like 77 carries or something like that. So he's almost 600 yards rushing, 8 yards a carry, but they're barely giving him the ball. He has 6 touchdowns. He also has almost 100 yards receiving and a touchdown as well. It does blow my mind, because every time I see him touch the ball, it's this amazing, huge play, but he's barely getting any touches at all. I mean, part of that is that, yeah, like you say, Calandria is doing really great, right? I mean, he's a transfer from UVA. He had 4,000 plus yards passing at UVA. So he's a starter at a Power 4 level, and he comes down here to the group of 5, which is kind of a little bit, you don't always see that happening. And then obviously UVA was going a different direction, but like, you don't always see that happening. And then he comes down and continues. He's going to definitely beat his total last year. He had over 2,000 yards passing. He's definitely on track. He has 1,400 yards throwing right now, almost a 70% completion percentage too, which I think that also gets overlooked with him, because he's not just a guy that's, Josh Allen throwing the ball over the place, but it's got like a 53% completion when he was at Wyoming. This is actually a quarterback that's actually making good reads, good decisions, and completing the ball more times than he doesn't. And then also 10 touchdowns versus only 3 picks. So takes care of the ball, really explosive on his feet, over 300 yards rushing. I love what I've seen out of him, and he does scare me against a Boise State defense that has improved massively in the secondary, but at the same time has really struggled against the running quarterbacks. I mean, all the times that Eastern Washington had a pretty good mobile quarterback, and Boise State still had trouble at times stopping him. Obviously, we know what Air Force and USF were able to do. Air Force a little bit of a different beast with the option, but this is a scary matchup going up against Calandria and Thomas. I'd also like to bring up on the defensive side for UNLV, I'm really a little bit worried about Brown, because I know that doesn't have a ton of tackles, 26 tackles, but he leads the Mountain West in interceptions. He has 4 picks, 2 of those touchdowns. coming up against Max Matson, who isn't necessarily in the best headspace right now with the way that he has played recently. I think he had a pretty good game last week, at least the kind of game he needed to overcome some adversity and play better in the second half. But only a couple weeks ago, he threw 4 picks. And so this is definitely a UNLV team that is capable of beating Boise State. Now, whether they're going to or not, I think will depend maybe a little bit on Boise State's side as well, the team that they present on this table. But this, don't get me wrong, while I say that 6-0 for UNLV is a little bit inflated based on teams they've played, winning means something. The fact that they've gotten to 6 wins means they have a culture that can overcome adversity, and they do have some real flashing explosive potential on this roster that does concern me coming up against a Boise State team that's not been the most consistent program so far this year.
Yeah, I think that's really good analysis. And ultimately, this team has survived off of turnovers and off of getting, Amaris Brown has been a ball hawk, and he was a UCLA guy, and there was that whole thing with him and Nico Yamavalea. He's a ball hawk, and this if Maddox Matson, look, if he plays like he did versus Notre Dame, and look, Notre Dame's great. We're not going to put pressure on Maddox Matson like the Notre Dame Fighting Irish did. But if he plays terribly, UNLV can absolutely pick. If he's making mistakes, like if Maddox Matson doesn't play well, there's going to be interceptions. Like he will throw, because this team, they cannot stop the run. They can't do it, but they can give kind of weird coverages and get interceptions. So I think there is a vulnerability there, and I think that's really good analysis.
Well, let's get into the keys to the game here and kind of talk about where this game is going to trend and what Boise State needs to do to win it, and obviously on your end, what UNLV needs to. The way that we're going to do this is we're just going to run through. Each of us will give a key, and then the other person will give a key for their program. Bronco Nation, throw in your own thoughts, your own keys to the game as well, your own thoughts on what we're talking about. Throw that in as we're going through. And I didn't mean to just say Bronco Nation. Rebel fans, you're watching as well. Make sure that you also put that in as we're going throughout this video. But we'll start off with Boise State, obviously, Boise State channel here. So starting off, key number 1 for Boise State for me is stop the quarterback. Yes, Thomas is an explosive threat. He definitely needs to be a focus. But at the end of the day, for whatever reason, whether it's the coaching or just because he's such an incredible player, this is a quarterback-focused team for UNLV. And Calandria, dependent on what game he has, you talk about Max Matson, dependent on the game he has, depends on if Boise State can win. Well, on the other side of the field, I also think, UNLV getting a vote in this, Calandria, the type of player he decides to be in this matchup, will have a massive impact. Yes, Boise State has done much better in recent weeks against the pass. Right now, Boise State is only giving up 185.8 yards per game in the passing game. That's 32nd in the country, which is incredible considering that after the Air Force game, they were 85th overall in the nation. And so now they're moved up to 32nd. The last 3 quarterbacks, all of them have had career lows in passing come against Boise State, which again I want to repeat because Bronco Nation is just mostly ignoring this fact. I still see people calling Jamari Warren to be fired. Boise State secondary has completely turned things around. Listen to some of these numbers. Coming into their games versus Boise State, the last 3 quarterbacks averaging for AJ Swan App State averaged 293 yards per game passing versus Boise State had 64 yards. Notre Dame's quarterback Carr, 272 yards passing versus Boise State only had 189. And then last week, New Mexico's quarterback actually 3rd in passing coming into that game. Jack Lane, 232 yards passing per game, only 115 versus Boise State. Now, all of those 3 quarterbacks, though, share one thing in common, and that is that they were all maybe mobile, but pocket passing quarterbacks. Okay, they're not guys that are going to be getting a ton of designed runs. Not the case when you're talking about Calandria. This is a fantastic quarterback who is exactly the type of strength that feeds into Boise State's weakness, which even goes back not just to this season, but like the last 4 or 5 years, Boise State has struggled to stop the running quarterbacks. One of the main reasons UCF beat Boise State when we were at their house is because they had a running quarterback and we couldn't stop him on a lot of the times he rolled out. And so it's going to be interesting. Have the Boise State secondary turned the corner in the way that I think they have? Have they made the change to the fact that even when they're faced with a potential running threat, they can still have the eye discipline to not get beat deep? Because UNLV has some players that can beat you deep. We didn't talk about him in the players, but Jaden Bradley, 28 receptions, almost 500 yards receiving. He's at 2 touchdowns. He is a guy who can beat you deep. And then obviously, UNLV, 100 yards receiving for Jaden Thomas. They have guys that can beat you in the passing game. So can Boise State stop the pass? On top of that, can they stop the run? Boise State has been runnable, like I said, against running quarterback, but they've also not brought great pressure against the quarterback in the pocket either. They only have on the season right now 13 sacks, which is more than UNLV, who only has 7, but they only have 13 sacks, which is 61st in the country. This coming from a Boise State defense that last season was at one point #1 in the country. Around this time of the season, they were #1 in the country in sacks and pressures on the quarterback. And so far in the season, only the 13 sacks. And so for Boise State to win this game, part of the reason JVM is a key player for me, part of the reason Ty Benefield a key players, you got to be able to stop the ball through the air, but you also have to start applying some consistent pressure and not letting UNLV do what USF did with Brian Brown, being able to just run all over you. This is going to be a massive test. Truly, where is this Boise State defense? And can Shenander and Tamari Warren, can this secondary prepare for a threat and actually be able to handle it when it's coming up against their true weakness? All that's going to be shown on the table when Boise State faces UNLV. That's key number 1, stop the quarterback for Boise State.
That's really good. Yeah, I mean, it's UNLV goes as Anthony Calandria goes. And so stopping him, whatever form that looks like, you don't want him to run for 110 yards, which he's capable of doing. You don't want him to throw for 300 yards, which he's capable of doing. He's a dangerous player. Absolutely. So I think that's a really good key. And it kind of, my first key for UNLV for trying to beat Boise State is, Boise State, I see them, they're just under 200 yards rushing per game. 190 is what I'm seeing right now. I think the Rebels have to hold Boise State to under 200 yards rushing. I mean, that's a pretty high number. That's a pretty high number. But UNLV can't allow Boise State to run for 250 yards. I tried to pick what is the highest possible number because we gave up 603 yards to Air Force last week and still won the game. What is the highest possible rushing number that Boise State can get and UNLV still have a conceivable chance of winning this game? And the number that I came up with was 200 yards. Now, look, if they run for 205 yards, I mean, whatever. It's kind of an arbitrary number, is what I mean. It's not like it's an iron curtain if we keep them under 200 yards. That's still an obnoxious amount of rushing yards, by the way. But that is my opinion. I think that 200-yard barrier, Boise State's going to get a lot of runs. They're going to have 20, 30-yard breakouts. They're going to have probably a house touchdown. But can you keep them under 200 yards rushing? Can you not be the worst rushing defense of all time? Because that's pretty much the standard that we're asking for this UNLV rushing defense. And that is, I think, an achievable goal if they're going to play better. I'm not going to say they're going to play well, but if they're going to play better, I think that's achievable. And that's probably the highest possible amount they can allow and still have a shot in the game.
Yeah, we'll talk about here in a moment for Boise State, because it actually kind of leads into one of my third keys. But yes, stopping the run for UNLV on their side is going to be absolutely massive, because if they do, it completely throws off the entire Boise State offense. Because Nate Potter has said, we're a run-first team, we're an option, a play-action pass second, and then we'll figure it out in third, to kind of paraphrase there. But basically, run and then play action. And if you stop the first thing, if you stop the run, Boise State really doesn't have any way to dig themselves out of that. Occasionally, they'll have a nice deep pass from Matson to bend forward usually. But generally speaking, Boise State is not designed to be effective if the first run doesn't work. It's almost like they're kind of like an Army-Navy type program. If you stop that fullback dive on the first play, it throws off the entire offense. Well, for UNLV, if they can stop that first run, keep it under 3 yards or something like that, then Boise State's entire offensive strategy is completely thrown off works. And again, sometimes they can come back from, sometimes they can't, but then it's reliant on Madsen. So definitely a great key for UNLV. For Boise State, my key number 2 for them is don't beat yourself. I think, again, this is not disrespect to UNLV. They are certainly a very dangerous opponent who can beat Boise State on their own merits. But when we have seen Boise State struggle, even last week versus New Mexico, the main reason that they've kept a lot of these teams around or struggled to be competitive is because they are beating themselves. Starting off with 51 penalties. Boise State is the 125th worst team in the country in terms of penalties per game. They are averaging 8.5 penalties per game. They're giving up 72.6 yards in penalties every single game, and that coming from an offense that has struggled to be consistently explosive. Boise State is absolutely killing their chances in their penalty yardage right now. It is so unlike any Boise State team we've seen in the past. Even under Andy Avalos, they never struggled this badly with penalties, and I'm not sure what caused it or how to fix it, but for whatever reason, a complete lack of discipline by Boise State, specifically when it comes to penalties. But it doesn't stop there. We talked about at the beginning, those miscues, special teams especially. It seems almost every single game Boise State has had a major mistake in special teams that has had an impact on the game. It's obviously starting off with the USF being able to score a touchdown because Boise State didn't realize that the quarterback, the second string quarterback, had run out onto the field instead of the punter, and USF is able to score a touchdown. And then missed field goals earlier on. That has been resolved, but 100-yard touchdown allowed last week versus New Mexico, who is not a great returning team. And then obviously the muff point after attempt that Boise State ended up being able to turn into a touchdown, but that's just more miscues. That shouldn't have even happened. It should have just been or not point after a field goal. It should have just been a normal kicked field goal for Boise State. And instead, obviously, they were able to make something out of it. But the biggest key overall, the biggest thing, the biggest enemy on the field when Boise State steps out there is honestly themselves. UNLV is a massive threat. Yes. But at the same time, the biggest thing that could get in the way of Boise State being able to win this game is the Boise State program itself. And so can Boise State clean that up in a system going against a team and an environment where they are going to be under pressure? Can they actually step up and be controlled? Can they actually stop these needless penalties and actually show self-discipline when they have the pressure and the focus on them? That, again, we're talking about a game that's going to prove a lot about where each of these programs are. Well, that right there is one of the biggest things that we need to see Boise State improve out of. Quarterback play, everything else, that needs to show up as well. But the biggest thing, the biggest factor that gives me concern for the future is the fact that Boise State is so undisciplined. Can they play disciplined, and can they not beat themselves? Key number 2 for Boise State.
Yeah, that actually goes perfectly into my second key. Create havoc. I think this has UNLV's played in some bizarre games this season, whether it be the Air Force game, the 51-48, the game where UNLV fans were actually quiet on defense to try and make it so that Air Force had as good of a chance to score as possible so that we could get the ball away from the Air Force offense and back into the UNLV offense. I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. There were people on the sideline at Allegiant Stadium on Saturday. Calm down, quiet down, guys. We need to get this defense off the field. We need to let Air Force score as quickly as possible so that we allow the UNLV offense to score. There's been some weird games. There's the Miami of Ohio game. We were down by 14 points 3 separate times. We came back 3 separate times from 14 points in that game. And that, again, that Miami of Ohio program, they're MAC champions. That's not a bad program. That was a good win, especially on the G5 left. You're going to beat a G5 team on the road. That's a reasonable team to beat. That Wyoming game, we're playing in the sleet. They were literally trying to clear the sidelines with folding tables with the hail and sleet and snow on the sidelines. They were clearing them with folding tables because we didn't have anything to clear snow with. And then of course the first game against Cody Hawkins, Idaho State, one of the most bizarre games I've ever seen in my life. UNLV is getting destroyed by an FCS team that has not even done that well this season. They've put up points. They've played some good games, but they haven't really won. And so we're the kings of havoc. I mean, and I think that in order for this game to go UNLV's way, weird crap has to go down. I'm talking muff punts. I'm talking blocked punts. I'm talking weird interceptions, tipped interceptions. You have to turn this. You have to be the Joker. You have to be Joker from Dark Knight. Everything, you have to be crazy with a plan. And you're not going to win this. You're not going to win this as a conventional game. UNLV isn't going to run the ball and win a 21-7 or 21-14 game against Boise State. You have to be the Joker, and you have to go up there and cause havoc. And I think this UNLV team can do that because they have done that. Again, this is a different caliber opponent, but even that UCLA game, there was some havoc. So that's key number 2 for me. Create havoc, whether that be turnovers, special teams, something that Rebels have done, something they can do, and something that I feel like kind of feeds off of what you just said pretty well.
Well, that is a definite factor for this game for Boise State because, again, the undisciplined level is really off the charts right now. They've shown themselves susceptible to that trickeration. They did a good job, actually, against Eck, who's a good coach at New Mexico. He brings a lot of creativity to his offense. New Mexico kind of just lined up and played Boise State in the first half. In the second half, they did try a trick play, a pass back to the quarterback. Boise State blew up. So maybe they're getting better at that eye discipline. But I agree, coming in, causing havoc on the blue, finding a way to take the crowd out of it, which will depend. If it rains a little bit in the over halftime, then they might all leave anyway, like we saw versus New Mexico. But for Bronco Nation, showing up in this game, staying through it all the way out is obviously a massive key. But for UNLV, finding a way to take the crowd out of it and bringing some havoc, bringing some chaos, that is definitely a massive key for them. And I think that also plays well into my third key, which is for Boise State, for Max Matson to take the lead. This is a program right now that is struggling in a big part because they don't have a key player who is a consistent playmaker for them. And I think that Maddox Madsen has to find a way to step into that role and avoid the chaos and bring some stability for this team through a game like UNLV. Boise State right now, their offensive line is really struggling, and it's an offensive line that you expected to be one of the best in the conference coming into this season because they only lost one player from an incredible line last year. But like I've said before in the past, an offensive line, it doesn't matter if you have 3 or 4 great players. It's like a wall. If you have one weak spot, the enemy is coming through. An offensive line is an organism. And they've just struggled to build that chemistry and actually be consistent on offensive line. And the big part of that, I think, is because the quarterback isn't really a threat right now for Boise State. The offense, part of it is the offensive scheme in that it is an offense that is dependent on the run. And then the quarterback gets an opportunity to be productive off of the run. That worked great when you had Ashton Genty. It doesn't work so great right now when you have an offensive line that is struggling and also a great running back room, but not that next level elite talent that can necessarily have a huge play when they've got 7 defenders coming down the box to try and stop them. That's just not realistic. That's not what you see in general, and that's what you're seeing because Boise State, the defense Boise State are facing, they know that the over the top is not a risk right now, and you're seeing in how Boise State is playing out. They are struggling right now in tackles for loss. Last week versus New Mexico, a team that is what the 83rd worst in the country in tackles per loss. They've only had 5.2 yard tackles per game for loss per game coming into the matchup versus Boise State. They had 11 tackles for loss versus Boise, and most of those were on outside runs. Anytime Boise State tried to do any form of stretch play, almost every time New Mexico was back there making havoc in the backfield, and Boise State was forced to, which really annoys fans, just basically run it up the middle every single time. And eventually, in the second half, they wore down on New Mexico enough to be able to be productive. UNLV is not a team like that. They have enough depth on this roster because of what they've done in the transfer portal that you're not going to just wear them down throughout the game and be able to come up with another 110 yards rushing when you only had 50 or so yards rushing in the first half. And when you look at this Boise State program, their running game looks really good. Okay, so right now Boise State's averaging, like we said, close to about 190 yards per game, which would put them 35th in the country. But that is also building off of 328 yards rushing versus Eastern Washington, the FCS program, and 282 yards rushing versus Air Force, who has completely complied with the order to change from Department of Defense to Department of War by getting rid of their defense. And so that is, both of those are not things that you are going to say are consistent for Boise State. Actually, what we've seen is 122 yards rushing versus USF, only 100 yards versus Notre Dame. And in the first half, 53 yards rushing versus New Mexico. They wore them down, ended up with 161. But for a program that says we are run first, you are not running first. They are not finding any way to be consistent in the running game. They're having some big breakaway explosive runs, but they are not a program that is doing well in the running game. And I think all of that comes back to the quarterback play and coaching in what they are calling for this Boise State offense. And so Maddox Madsen needs to take the lead. He needs to take the opportunities that he's given. This is not a defense that you can be willy-nilly with the ball. They will make you pay, like we talked about. But at the same time, Maddox Madsen needs to be given the opportunity to take the lead. He needs to be given some nice, quick throws. That's not really something we've seen at all. Some nice, quick passes to try and catch this defense off edge and get him into a rhythm. He's basically looking deep downfield because that's the way the play is drawn up every single time for them. And so for Boise State, if they want to have success in this game, Maddox Madsen needs to rise to the occasion, but he also needs to be given the opportunity to be successful in this offense. And that means changing your scheme from one that purely focuses on trying to establish the run to one that tries to build some momentum for the quarterback and then uses that energy to be able to allow the running game to be effective. Nate Potter, he's supposed to be an offensive genius. He can make adjustments. If you're looking at this Boise State offense so far this season, the offense he's running has not been effective. It has not been consistent and effective, and certainly not against opponents that are strong enough to play you at your level. If Boise State wants to win this game, they need to rely more on their pass, give their quarterback an opportunity, and then obviously Madsen needs to step up in this game if he has any chance of winning, but also if he wants any chance of proving that he's the quarterback, not just for this season, but also for next year as well. So 3 keys for Boise State before you wrap up with your third one. Stop the quarterback, don't beat yourself, and Madsen take the lead.
Okay, my last key is really straightforward. I hope you'll indulge me because there's kind of 2 parts to it. The key overall is don't be stupid early. You can be stupid late, but don't be stupid early. And the way that I would say is the best way to personify or just exemplify, I guess I should say, whether UNLV is being stupid early is touches and carries for Jet Thomas in the first quarter. There has been so many games where he has 1 or 2 carries in the first quarter, and it is ridiculous. And we're digging ourselves into holes, whether it be Wyoming. Listen, Mullen has brought in, he really tried to bring in a good staff. I mean, Corey Dennis is the offensive coordinator. He's the son-in-law of Urban Meyer, and Dennis and Mullen and Meyer, I should say, are really close friends. So I think he's kind of a little bit of a nepotism hire, if you ask me a little bit. He's okay. He's fine. And then, of course, we have Paul Gunther, I actually thought I started a rumor. I mean, it kind of seemed like it was successful. A couple people fell for it, that he was going to be Oregon State's next head coach, because it has been a rough performance for Paul Gunther in that defense. Mullen is an incredibly good head coach, and he's proven that. I mean, he's got a resume that very few coaches in the history of college football, really. I mean, there's 30 or 40, very few can really match. New Year's Six Bowl wins, #1 rankings. I mean, he's done it all, but his staff has struggled. And the biggest sign that I can always point to, if you want to try and boil something down to the simplest problem, is UNLV is trying to be too tricky in the first quarter, and they're putting themselves in holes, and they're digging themselves into bad situations. And you can almost always point to one stat. How many carries does Jet Thomas have? I don't care if he gets stuffed up. I don't care if it's a 20-yard loss on first down in their first possession. I want to see 3 Jet Thomas carries, 4, 5 Jet Thomas carries in the first quarter. UNLV cannot get into a position where they're down 14-0 at the end of the first quarter, that's 21-0 at the end of the first quarter. They can't let themselves be dug into an early hole. What you have to do, and this is how UNLV can, and if they do, this is how they will win the game. It'll be Boise State's in kind of a weird position. There's been some weird plays, and the game stayed close. It hasn't turned into, UNLV's not coming back. It's been a close game, a one-score game either way, and UNLV essentially allows Boise State to kind of choke and make a mistake. I mean, I think that's the way that they do this. And then Calandria plays well enough to win. It's got to be a weird game, and they can't get into an early hole. And Jet Thomas's carry count, that's going to tell you a lot about whether they're in an early hole or not. So that's my last key of the game.
Well, to summarize this matchup, again, is going to be a very, very tough game, I think, for both programs. Regardless of which team wins this one, I doubt that you're going to see one program just completely blow out the other. I think that, again, with where both of these two teams are, I think that this is a very, very evenly matched program for UNLV. It's a team offensively that is averaging 442 yards per game overall, including almost 200 yards rushing, which, again, for a team that's so focused on passing the ball, they're also doing a great job of running the ball as well. And then for Boise State, they're also a great offense, 465 yards per 465.3 yards per game as well. And then defensively, that's where you start seeing the struggles. I think this is a game that could develop into some form of offensive shootout, because for UNLV, while they are all having 442.3 yards per game offensively, they're allowing 445 yards per game defensively. Now, yes, that includes the game versus Air Force. The option's always tricky, a little bit different. There's 1,200 plus yards of offense between both of those programs, like 93 points or something like that. Yes, that's part of those stats, but UNLV has struggled. It's not just against teams like Air Force versus Wyoming. They actually got outgained in that game. Wyoming had 356 yards of offense, and then versus Miami, Ohio, who's a 3-3 program out of the MAC, they had almost 400 yards of offense versus UNLV in that game. And so this is a team that I think defensively there are issues. Obviously, Boise State has had their struggles. They've done much better. They're looking right now at about 331 yards per game that they're giving up, but they have struggled against running quarterbacks. They haven't had to see one in a while. A UNLV team that's 6-0 and hungry to prove themselves, high-octane offense, and a mobile quarterback that smells blood in the water. And if they ever thought there was a chance to win on the blue, which they've never done, all of those FCS wins were at UNLV. If there was ever a chance for them to win on the blue, this is probably their best chance with where this Boise State team's at right now, and they know that. On the other hand, for Boise State, it's a 4-2 program that scraped by New Mexico, and I think was scared in that game. I think that I actually feel better about this Boise State team after having to rally back from the New Mexico matchup than if they just blown them out, because that gives a lot of teachable moments that I think are going to apply heavy into this week, and they'll come out ready to try and prove themselves in this game. It's a program that's desperate, just like UNLV is desperate to prove their record. Boise State is desperate to prove that they're not the team that a lot of people think they are, that they're not just some 4-2 down year program. They still have something to achieve. And that big achievement that they are still fighting for, that is completely within their control, is the Mountain West title. And this team is not going to overlook UNLV because they are all in on that number one goal, which is going out and winning the Mountain West. And this is really the first major hurdle to getting there. And usually when UNLV plays Boise State, it's their Super Bowl kind of situation. Any team plays Boise State, it's kind of their Super Bowl. Well, I think this game, not that UNLV is Boise State Super Bowl, but I think this is the biggest matchup. If you're looking the rest of the week, the rest of the year, yeah, they have to play Fresno State, they have to play San Diego State, but UNLV is their last chance to really prove that they can come up against a team that's 6-0 and is having a solid season and still do what Boise State teams have done in the past, which is come out and win. So before I give my score prediction, I'll let you kind of summarize where these programs are. But these two programs both have a lot to prove on the blue this week. What are your thoughts before we look at the final score predictions and look at what some of the people in the comments have been saying?
Yeah, I'm just excited. Like, I'm going to Boise for this game. So I'm sure if you've listened to me before, people, and you already know this, I lived in Boise. I love Boise. It's one of my favorite places on planet Earth. One of the happiest years of my life was spent there. I'm so excited to get back up there to go to a game on the blue. I grew up a Boise State fan because UNLV football was just not quite there. And so I'm trying to, my attitude about going up to this Boise game is I just want to soak it in. I just want to be grateful that I have a chance to support a 6-0 football team that I love, that is great, that is fun, and play in a really fun environment and arena in Boise State. And a great, I'm sure Boise State fans will probably not, they'll probably respond pretty well to Jeremiah Dickey kind of grilling them for not being there for the New Mexico game. But that's kind of my big mindset about this. I'm just grateful that we get this matchup. I've already kind of stated how I feel about this UNLV team. It's obviously a good enough team to be 6-0, and there's no such thing as a bad 6-0 team. I'm sorry. Doesn't mean they're great, but there's no such thing as a bad one. And my attitude about this game specifically is that we have nothing to lose. Like it's kind of great. I love that Vegas gave us that line, because Vegas knows what it's talking about. It got the Boise State Notre Dame line like exactly right. Obviously it did favor. It's not always right. I mean, Boise State was favored against USF, for example. Although that game was still a bit shocking to basically everybody who watched it. And week one games are always tough too, but nobody's going to pick UNLV. I mean, I'm sure there are going to be a very few people that pick UNLV, but in my opinion, this is kind of a perfect nobody believes in us scenario. Everybody thinks we're frauds. And I get that every team always tries to manufacture that narrative. Like I'm sure Spencer Daniels is going to be like, nobody thinks we're going to beat UNLV. It's like, oh, we haven't beat UNLV since UNLV hasn't beaten Boise State since the bicentennial. It's been 1976. That, in my opinion, this is a great, what do you have to lose? Go all in, bet the house. This UNLV program is rising. It's still growing. It's still got a ways to go before I think it gets to where it could be a few years from now. And I know the Mountain West, maybe we can call Gloria. Maybe we can get some nice calls. Maybe the Mountain West certainly wants UNLV to win this game. So I'm just going to try and enjoy it. And I think UNLV has a shot. I'll tell you exactly what kind of shot that is in a second. UNLV's got a chance, and I'm just grateful to be going to Boise, and I'm grateful to be playing Boise State. And I hope that despite all the nastiness between the two conferences and between everybody, that we can kind of soak it in and enjoy the moment, because it's not going to be around for forever.
Well, go ahead, shoot that shot. What's the score prediction?
Okay, so I did advanced analytical analysis. I've been thinking about this game for quite some time. When I did kind of score stuff, machine stuff, I put the game in, I ran it through simulations. I got UNLV, if they played this game 100 times, I got UNLV winning this game between 15 to 20 times. So about an 80% chance for Boise State, 15 to 20% chance for UNLV. Almost all the wins were very close. There was no blowouts or anything. And the most common score actually that I kind of, when I played this game through in my head over and over and over again, was about a 2-touchdown win for Boise State, or in 10 to 14 points, a 10-point win, something like that. I'm going to go the other way. I think that this UNLV team is seriously flawed, and I think this is going to be a Boise State blowout. I've got, I was very tempted to, when we were doing keys of the game, to kind of throw a Hail Mary and say, the third key of the game for UNLV is they have to score 49 points, because I think Boise State is scoring 48 points, and I think UNLV is scoring 21. And I think a lot of those points will come a little late. UNLV will put up yards, but I worry a little bit about our end zone, our red zone struggles. Not that we're a terrible red zone team by the statistics, but we have shown some vulnerability in the red zone. I think it's a fun game. I think there is some chaos, and I don't think that this 48-21, if you play this game 100 times, I don't think this is the most repeated outcome. But I just think Boise State has a lot to prove, and I think they're in a good spot. And it's really tough to win in Boise, as Boise State has the second longest home win streak in the country, I think, only behind Alabama, or not. I can't remember who it is, but I think this game kind of ultimately goes Boise's way. And people will say, "Oh, UNLV was frauds." I'll have them exactly the same spot in my power rankings. When I have never been like, UNLV is a great team this season, so I'm not going to be dropping UNLV hardly at all, regardless of the result. If we could play in Vegas, maybe you could see that kind of the chaos ensue. But that 48-21, I thought about going up to 54, but I was like, Boise State's probably not going to put that many points up because they're going to be controlling time of possession. Boise State's going to be able to score however it wants against this UNLV defense. And I think Maddox Matson's going to have a bounce back game. So that's my prediction, 48-21 for the Broncos.
Wow. Well, I am predicting a Boise State win in this game. Boise State is undefeated on the blue under Spencer Danielson. He knows what that means. The culture of winning on the blue is very important. The team is going to be very, very focused, very, very dedicated in this matchup. A lot to prove across the board. This is the ultimate test with Boise State secondary to really prove where they're at. That's the ultimate test right now, at least the rest of the year for Maddox Matson. And also, Spencer Danielson hasn't lost to a Mountain West team yet either. And I don't think it starts on the blue versus UNLV. I do think it will be a closer game, though. I'm not predicting a massive blowout. I mean, I like that. That gives me some hope, especially coming from a great analytical mind like yourself. But for Boise State in this game, I do think it will be a little bit of a closer matchup. I think that UNLV's offense will test Boise State's defense, especially in the first half, first 3 quarters or so of the game. I think Boise State will struggle a little bit and have to try and come back from that. And I think that obviously stopping that running quarterback is going to be a big issue for them. And I think they make great adjustments. And Shenander last year made incredible adjustments all season long defensively. Haven't necessarily seen the same level of adjustments this season, but as far as adjustments to fix the defense overall, not necessarily second half, but second half of the season adjustments, he has been able to do that. So I think that he'll come out in that second half with the adjustments needed to get the win versus UNLV. I'm thinking for Boise State in this game that the porous UNLV defense, with especially their struggles against the running game, Max Matson stepping up, and also not that UNLV is great at stopping the pass either. I think Boise State's able to score offensively in this one, 45 points. UNLV gets theirs in the first 3 quarters before Boise State pulls away in the fourth. Been a great fourth quarter team, and they win this game 45-32. So I am looking at about that 2-score win or something like that. Now, just to kind of throw out some of the thoughts here from the fans and the watchers, viewers here. Please, again, remember to go back in as soon as we wrap this up and finish in the next few minutes. Make sure you go back in and comment on the video itself so that your comments can be part of the score prediction challenge, because as soon as this goes away, none of these comments are going to exist anymore, just the way the StreamYard works. But just to throw out some of the thoughts, what people are thinking. So we've got Boise State 37-27, some similar to my thoughts there as far as the gap. We've got 14-point score difference here. A couple of score predictions that were thrown out at the beginning. 34-31. I mean, it could come down to that. Boise State's in a better position kicking-wise, so I do give Boise State a little bit more chance there if it does come down to a close game. Boise State winning by 8. This one actually pretty much the same as your score prediction here. So a couple of similar minds there, 48-24. We've got 38-24. I'm not seeing any UNLV score predictions, so either just a lot of Boise State fans watching or just some resigned UNLV fans. We have 21-7. I was shocked by that. I think, obviously the same that we saw last year, but with where these offenses are and specifically where the defenses are, I'd be surprised if we were able to keep it that low scoring. But who knows? 35-21. And then that one we've already thrown out. So I think most people are similar in their mindset to this game overall, a Boise State victory. But that does not mean that this is not going to be an entertaining game or that Boise State is guaranteed to win. UNLV is a good program. I'm going to agree with you. I'm not going to say they're a very great program. They're not elite. I don't think they're going to win the playoffs. I think they've probably got 2 or 3 losses on their docket, obviously predicting this one. And then even with the easier schedule, I think they stubbed their toe against maybe a Colorado State team with a, desperation, trying to save a coaching career there for Norvell, or maybe Utah State, with Bronco Mendenhall, maybe something like that. I think maybe 9-3 is still probably a ceiling for them, but it's definitely a UNLV team that is dangerous, a UNLV team that is exciting to watch. And I think we're going to have a good game for Boise State versus UNLV in this matchup. So make sure that you are all tuning in on Saturday, 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Obviously, we'll have my review show coming out. Jason won't be with me there for that one, but it's been awesome having him on. As was said earlier on here in the video, he is a fantastic guest. He does an incredible job with his analysis and his perspective, whether you're a Boise State fan, a Rebel fan, or if you just kind of stumbled on. I've got a couple of Notre Dame fans that have been commenting and watching my videos. So even if you're a Notre Dame fan, there is stuff for you on Jason's channel. He talks about all of college football. He does a fantastic job. Once this all processes, it takes about 24 hours once it's done for me to be able to actually make comments and stuff. But once that's all done, I'm going to go through and I'll put the link to his channel in the description of this video. Make sure you go and check it out. Thank you so much, Jason, for coming on. And it's been, again, I'm disappointed that this is the last time. Maybe we'll see. Maybe we get to do this one more time where we'll see where these two teams end up. But it is disappointing that UNLV decided not to join Boise State in the move to the Pac-12, because this has been a fantastic series. But I've also enjoyed getting to build our relationship as well and finding your channel and everything else. So thanks so much for coming on, man. It's a great discussion as always.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. And for the Rebel fans, there's a couple of them here in the comments. Just know, like, anything could happen, just because I predict something doesn't mean I'm going to be right. And I hope you all subscribe to Bronco as well. He does a great job. And yeah, like Brian says, Brian's one of the big UNLV people on Twitter. You've probably seen him around, but I can't wait, man. So I can't wait to be up there in Boise. And I hope if you're a Boise State fan, go ahead and shoot me a DM. I'd love to come shake your hand. I'll be walking around Albertson Stadium. I'll be walking around downtown Boise. I can't wait. I hope we get another one for the Mountain West Championship game. Then we really will probably be able to be like, oh, well, this is it. But thanks so much, man. This was a great show. So I hope you have a good time, and I hope all the Boise State fans can enjoy this game, and we can all kind of bask in it a little bit, because it's a lot of fun. College football is the best. You get 6 of these a year. Time to enjoy them. 12 of them a year, but 6 of them at home a year. So time to enjoy it.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. Make sure again that you check out Horseshoe Spirits Liqueurs at any liquor store in the southwest of Idaho. There's more coming into more stores every single day. Make sure that you're asking if they don't have it and they can get it in. Must be 21 or older to consume. And of course, like I said, make sure you check out Jason's show. And please, again, this is like the 5th time I've said this. Please make sure you go put your score prediction and comments on the video as soon as we wrap up streaming here, so that those can live in longevity afterwards and be part of the score prediction challenge. But thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe to both of our channels, and also follow us on Twitter as well. And as always, go Big Blue!